Hi, I'm Christina Drake.
And I'm Kirk Christensen.
And this is Pain in My Foot.
Ouch.
There are so many outlets for current events nowadays, between the TV, radio, and social media. We're badgered with it everywhere. With no escape from the journalists and Facebook friends hounding their points and declaring their side the right side, all the stories can get mixed up and confusing. So here we like to build a conversation on all those current events that can really be a pain in my foot.
Today we're building a conversation around a controversy that has been in the news a lot lately: violence. When violence is in the headline, the community at large always questions one thing about the perpetrator and his motives. Is this person mentally ill? Before we get too far into the topic, Christina and I have some background information. Mental illness includes diagnoses such as depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, psychosis, and bipolar disorder, among others.
It is also important to note that the general public favors the idea that mental health causes violence, but that doesn't mean it's true. This could cause issue because there may be relationship with stories that the media relays regarding mental illness and its relation to violence. For example, if the general public believes mental health is an indicator of violence, the media is more likely to write and deliver news related to this train of thought, which people may then turn around and take as proof.
There have been a lot of studies on this topic, as knowing this kind of information can help with policy making and changes in law.
Whoa, Kirk. Before we go getting into the nitty-gritty, let's first try to explain the different sides of the controversy.
Oh, you're right, Christina. So, people tend to think that mental illness is a cause of violence, but this can be a potentially dangerous accusation. So there is also a side that argues that there isn't a cause-effect relationship. But then still, there's a third opinion out there that says that there is a correlation between violence and mental illness, but not the one that you'd think.
Just a reminder that correlation is not the same as causation. Correlation just means that there is a relationship between two things, not that one necessarily causes the other. In this case, the third group believes that mental illness is associated with violence, but the association that they talk about is that those with mental illness are more often the receivers of violence rather than the perpetrators. For the sake of simplicity, we will focus on the two main groups: those that believe violence is correlated with mental illness in a negative light, and those who think that there is no causal relationship.
Excellent point, Christina. But viewers, you don't have to just take our word for it. As I said before, there has been a lot of research on this. For example, one study found that people with mental illness are 3 times more likely to be taken into custody than individuals without mental illness.
Further support from this side of the controversy comes from the team of Jennifer Scheme, Eliza Winter, Patrick Keneally, Jennifer Loudon, and Joseph Tatar, a group of psychologists who did research on this topic. Within their sample of people, they found that criminal offenders with mental illness are more likely to return to custody than their non-mentally ill counterparts.
Another group of psychologists, headed by Gillian Peterson, found that persons diagnosed with bipolar disorder have an increased risk for violence and other criminal behavior according to the results of their long-term study.
Along with this, it appears that much of the general public believes that people with mental illness are dangerous and are to be wary of. However, there is a big chance that this could be due to how people with mental illness are portrayed in the media, specifically movies. Often, they are the protagonists and are made out to be scary and unpredictable individuals.
In fact, the fear of people with mental illness has even been linked to the fear of the different, according to one study. And while there has been research that has seemed to conclude that mental illness can cause violence, the relationship has actually been weak, meaning that it might not be very important or have an effect at all.
Right you are, Kirk. But this side of the controversy is not without its weaknesses either. You see, most of this research that has been done has focused on the male population, and while this is all well and good, it might ruin or distort the data because it leaves out half the population by not including women.
Wow, Christina, this is definitely one of the trickiest controversies we've had on our show. I'm not sure what to think.
Well, Kirk, I think I have an idea, but first, let's see what some of our community members have to say. Before the show, we had our roaming reporter Derek hit the streets to ask people what they thought about the mental illness and violence controversy. Hi, Derek. What did you find out for us?
Good afternoon. I'm on the streets of South Jutland asking people what they think about the correlation of mental illness and violence, and if they think that mental illness really could be a cause. I was able to talk with a lot of people, and I picked out some of the best responses, just for you, Christina.
Oh, thanks, Derek. What have you found?
I roamed the streets looking for the average Joe's opinion, and what do you know? The first guy I talked to was Joe. Here's what he had to say.
I do believe in some cases one may correlate violence and mental illness, in particular instances. However, I would hesitate to say violence is caused by mental illness. An analogy, bacteria can cause an infection, but all infections are not caused by bacteria. It would be a slippery slope to brand mental illness as a cause of violence. That would be too simplistic and ignore the many variables that can cause someone to be violent, act violent, or respond violently to a situation.
Thanks for that, Joe. I also got a chance to talk to Dapper Drew. He seemed in a bit of a hurry, but I got a little bit of an opinion out of him.
Yeah?
Short and to the point. I like it. Man, I hope he got to wherever he was rushing off to in time. Doesn't he know that the subway leaves every 3.5 minutes? No need to rush, pal. Anyway, our next community member is the one and only spin class Amy. She has so much energy, I could barely keep up.
I don't think that mental illness causes violence. People with mental illnesses can commit crimes, but I don't think that's the reason that they do. Anyone can commit a crime, whether they have a mental illness or not. I believe the media plays on the fact that people have mental illnesses and draws attention to it, which increases the stigma of having a mental illness.
Couldn't even stop doing her exercises for a 1-minute interview. You go, Amy. Lastly, we have Dear Sweet Pretzel Cart Lady Cheryl. Best pretzels you can find on the street, or anywhere for that matter. Let's see what she had to say.
While I have not read any research about this topic, in my opinion, no, I do not believe mental illness and violence are necessarily connected. While some types of mental illness may interfere with judgment, there are many people who exercise poor judgment or let their feelings get out of hand, resulting in violence. Most violence reported in the media have nothing to do with mental illness. Mental illness in and of itself does not cause violence.
Well, that's all I have today. Thanks for having me. And community, thanks for letting me make you think. I hope I wasn't too much of a pain in the foot today. Back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Derek. To wrap up, in response to the question, are mental illness and violence positively correlated? The answer is a little complicated. People with mental illness are not more likely to commit acts of violence than a person of the general public. They are actually more often the victims. This common and untrue idea comes mainly from TV shows, movies, and stories printed in newspapers and magazines. However, more research definitely needs to be done.
Now the issue lies in reducing the stigma of mental illness because, as our roaming reporter Derek found, people still think that mental health and violence have a scary relationship. Knowing what we know, it's up to us to help reduce that stigma.
Thanks for building a conversation with us today, folks. Thanks for letting us into your homes and into your arguments. See you next time on Pain in My Foot.
Ouch.
Want more information on today's controversy so you can build your own conversation at home? Check out these sources.